this video, we're going to take a look at the OpenShift web console. So I'll demonstrate some of the features of the web console. We'll take a look at deploying an application and how we update an application, all using the web console. So the first thing I want to talk about is, well, how do you access the web console? So this right here is the default URL that we can use to access the web console. So the default URL is going to be console-openshift-console. And then the default, or the cluster name that you have for your OpenShift cluster. The web console works by interacting with the REST API to communicate with the OpenShift cluster. It's just a very user developer friendly way for you to build your projects, manage your projects, monitor your projects. Another nice feature about it is that administrators can configure different users for the web console. So the developers are going to have a slightly different experience of the admin users, and it'll just be more catered to the typical developer or admin tasks. Some other things that are really useful to do in the web console is that you can create and manage your persistent volume claims. You'll be able to monitor your builds, your deployments, your pods. You can track your system events. That'll help you troubleshoot any issues you might have. You can create and integrate a continuous integration and deployment pipeline with Jenkins. You can also manage a lot of your secrets and config maps and things like that. Pretty much anything that you can do in the CLI, you're going to be able to do in the web console. So it's a very powerful tool. Let's go ahead and jump into the demonstration. So I've already logged into my web console here, and the first thing you're going to see is a list of all of your projects. So it's a good page where you can manage, or delete projects, edit projects, things like that. First thing I'm going to do is create a new project to store this application. I'm going to name it console, and I'll give it the web console app, a test app. Okay. So create the project. Okay, great. So once we've created the project, you can see that the next thing we see is a link to this browse catalog. So the catalog, or the developer catalog, is where we can go to see the different types of applications that we can build with the built-in functionality of OpenShift. We also have other options to just directly deploy an image or import a YAML file of an application or of an OpenShift resource. So I'm going to go to Browse Catalog for now. And you can see that we get a list of different types of languages. There's a whole bunch in here, but I'm just going to stick with PHP for right now. So I'm just going to filter down. I'll click PHP. And when I click this window, it's going to give me some information about the type of application I'm trying to make. It's going to tell me which resources are being created. So basically, I'm going to need to pass in the source code for my PHP application. It's going to create a build config, an image stream, a deployment config, a service, and then optionally we can choose whether or not we want to expose it as a route. Okay, so I want to click Create Application. Okay, so I get my option to decide which namespace I want to put it in. I'm going to keep it in the namespace or project console. I'm going to set the version to 7.0 because that's the version of PHP that my app is running on. I'm going to set the name to be PHP test, and let me get the get URL. It's going to be http services.lab.example.com/php-hello world. Okay, so once I've entered the Git repository, I can optionally select to create a route. I'm going to go ahead and have it automatically create that route for me so that when the build finishes, it's going to expose the service all for me. Okay, so after I click build, I can keep track of where my pods are in their build process. Back on this project console homepage for my application, I can watch the pods come up just like I would with the OC git pods command on the CLI. So I'm looking here at my deployment config. You can tell based on the DC. So I've got an idea about what type of update strategy is being used, and I can see the replication controller, which is telling me that I want one pod to be spun up. And I can change that if I want. If I wanted to scale my application up, I could easily do that just by changing the deployment config. So in this case, I'm just going to wait and let this application spin up. Okay, so you can see now that our project status has updated. So the deployment config says we have 1 out of 1 pods available. So our application is already available. While we're here, we'll just explore a little bit about what else we can do in the web console. We've already seen the catalog, so we know that we can select the different types of templates and things we can use to help kickstart our application deployment. Under workloads is where we're going to have the definitions for our pods, our deployments, deployment configs, so all sorts of different Kubernetes and OpenShift resources, our config maps, and the replication controllers as well. If we go into networking is going to have our routes and our services managed there. We'll come back to that in a few minutes. Storage is going to have where all of our persistent volumes and our persistent volume claims, so we can go in there, navigate, edit, manage those resources. So let's go into the build section. So if I click on build configs, I can see that our most recent build completed or was created 6 minutes ago. So that was based on our PHP application. And similar to our deployment config, I can go in here and I can see the Git repository that this image is based on. And I'm also able to start new builds if I wanted to make an application source code change and wanted to kick off a new build and a new deployment. Okay, so before we kick off a new build, let's head back to the networking section and let's access our route. And it's much easier here. We can just simply click on this on our app because we already had the route automatically created, and we can see our application here. So hello world. So we were able to access the app immediately from the web console. So let's go ahead and make another code change and push that up to the repository, and then I'll use the web console to kick off another build, and we can see that change come through. Okay, so I've already cloned the Git repository, so I'm going to edit the index.php. I'm going to add a new line here, and I'm going to say a change has come. Backspace N. Okay. Now I'll do a git commit. Fancy new line. And let's do a push. Okay. So now when we kick off a new build, it's going to get that new the build config is going to pull down that new version of our application, and we should be able to access it again. So let's scroll down to build configs. Let's go into our build config. Under actions, we can click start build. So the nice thing about this view is that we can get an overview about our CPU and RAM consumption. We can click on logs or events to just get some information. This will help us debug if there are any issues with our build configs, or if we just want to see where in the build our application is. So I'm just going to leave this up here on the events for a few seconds and the log section, and we'll just wait for our pods to come back up. All right, so it looks like our image has successfully been pushed up. So let's go see if the deployment config has finished as well. I'm going to go back to the home status page, and it looks like our pod is up and running. Let's reload the app and see if our change is there. Okay, great. So it worked just as expected. So just like the command line, we were able to make our change. We were able to kick off a new build config, and we were able to see the change in our application. So that concludes this exercise, and that concludes the tech overview. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you found it really useful. If you're interested in learning more about containers, Kubernetes, and OpenShift, I highly recommend you take a look at Red Hat Training's DO180 course. That is our 3-day-long introduction course to all of these technologies. You'll get hands-on experience with exercises just like this. It's a great way to learn about how to use containers and how to use OpenShift. So thanks so much again.